There are questions buried beneath the sands of time. Across the world, ruins stand like riddles carved in stone. Forgotten cities, impossible artifacts, and strange alignments with stars all defy the explanations of modern science. Despite the tools of archaeology, astronomy, and geology, some mysteries refuse to yield their secrets. How did ancient people move stones weighing hundreds of tons without cranes or wheels? Why do unrelated civilizations share the same symbols, myths, and megalithic knowledge? And what did they know that we've lost? In the next 2 hours, we'll uncover ancient batteries sealed in clay, temples that predate known civilization, and cities that seem to have been built with knowledge far ahead of their time. We'll explore whispered legends, strange discoveries, and the eerie patterns that stretch across thousands of years and continents. And before we get into the video, the images in the video are only for added context, so there is no need to watch them closely. This video is perfect to listen to while you relax, study, or drift off to sleep. Please consider subscribing. These videos take a long time to create, and your support means the world to me. High above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco lies a place that shouldn't exist. Sacsayhuamán, a fortress, a temple, a riddle carved in stone. Its zigzagging walls are made of megalithic stones, some weighing over 100 tons, shaped with impossible precision, fitted together so tightly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. No mortar, no binding agent, just stone, interlocked like a 3D puzzle, immune to time and earthquakes. And the question is, how? The Inca, as far as archaeology tells us, didn't have the wheel. They didn't have iron tools. They didn't even have a written language to record their methods. And yet here stands Sacsayhuamán, an architectural achievement so baffling, modern engineers have admitted they couldn't replicate it with the same tools attributed to the Inca. Some stones at the site are over 30 feet tall. Others are etched with seemingly decorative features, knobs, protrusions, marks that may have served a purpose now lost to history. Were they used to move the stones? Or were they remnants of an even older construction tradition passed down from a forgotten time? Mainstream scholars insist the Inca built it all, and perhaps they did. But there's a problem. The Inca themselves never claimed to have built the foundational parts of Sacsayhuamán. According to oral tradition, those megalithic walls were already there when they arrived. Legends tell of an earlier people, powerful, mysterious, who shaped stone like clay. Some call them the Viracocha. Others whisper of giants. Still others believe the site was built with lost technologies we no longer understand. The Spanish conquistadors were stunned when they encountered Sacsayhuamán. To them, it was the work of demons. They tried to tear it down, repurposing the stones to build their own churches and homes. But the largest ones? They couldn't be moved, not even budged. They remain exactly where they were centuries ago, watching over Cusco like sentinels of a forgotten past. And the mystery deepens, because Sacsayhuamán isn't just a marvel of engineering, it's a mystery of geometry, astronomy, and sacred design. The fortress is aligned to the solstices. From the air, its layout resembles the head of a giant puma, with Cusco as its body and the nearby rivers forming its claws and tail. The Inca revered the puma as a sacred animal, part of a triad with the condor and the serpent, representing the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. This wasn't accidental. It was encoded knowledge, symbolic, cosmic. But how did they calculate this? How did they cut and move these stones, often across great distances, through rough Andean terrain with no draft animals, no carts, no cranes? Some researchers believe the answer may lie in sound. There are unproven but persistent theories that ancient civilizations understood acoustic levitation, using frequency and vibration to manipulate objects. While fringe, the idea is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Recent experiments have shown that sound can indeed move small objects. But could it move 100-ton boulders? Others suggest lost chemical processes, techniques to soften stone, making it malleable. The Inca did speak of a plant that could melt rock like wax. Could they have had knowledge of geopolymer science that was never written down, only spoken and now forgotten? Still others propose a simpler but no less astonishing theory, that Sacsayhuamán wasn't built in the time of the Inca at all, but is a remnant of a far older civilization, possibly from before the last ice age. A civilization erased by catastrophe, leaving behind only these ghostly stone fingerprints. The region isn't stranger to seismic activity. Earthquakes have toppled colonial buildings, churches, and homes. But Sacsayhuamán still stands. Its megalithic walls have survived centuries of tremors with barely a scratch. Why? Because of the way they were built, not in straight lines, but in interlocking zigzags, allowing the force of an earthquake to dissipate through the joints rather than shatter them. This kind of engineering is highly advanced, a structural wisdom that even modern architects recognize as brilliant. So here we are, at a site that defies explanation, where history ends and myth begins. Some say Sacsayhuamán was a military fortress. Others believe it was a sacred temple to the sun. But perhaps it was both or neither. Perhaps it was a legacy left behind to remind us that human history is longer, stranger, and far more mysterious than we think. Stand at the base of its walls, and you feel it. Not just awe, but unease. A sense that we've forgotten something important, something vast. Sacsayhuamán doesn't just challenge the past. It dares us to rethink what we know about civilization itself. And it's only the beginning.
In the arid hills of southeastern Turkey, buried for over 10,000 years, lies a mystery so profound it shattered everything we thought we knew about human civilization. Göbekli Tepe, a name that means pot-belly hill, unassuming, ordinary. But beneath this hill, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary. A vast and ancient complex of megalithic stone circles, intricately carved, astronomically aligned, and impossibly old. Carbon dating reveals Göbekli Tepe was built around 9600 BCE, 7,000 years before the pyramids, 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and thousands of years before agriculture, pottery, or written language were supposed to exist. Let that sink in. Before the invention of the wheel, before the domestication of crops, before the rise of any known city, there were people carving 20-foot limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons, arranging them in sacred circles and adorning them with haunting reliefs of animals, symbols, and abstract shapes. But how? And more importantly, why? According to mainstream history, complex religious structures like temples emerged after agriculture, after people settled down and formed societies. But Göbekli Tepe flips this narrative. It suggests that religion may have come first, that the desire to worship, to reach towards something higher, created civilization, not the other way around. So, who were these builders? We don't know. They left behind no tools, no signs of permanent homes, no graves, no writing. Just megaliths and mystery. The pillars are arranged in circular enclosures, many with twin central monoliths, almost like an ancient altar. Each circle could represent a cosmological or ritual space, and some researchers believe they align with constellations or solstices. On one pillar, a fox curls in relief, stylized, deliberate. On another, Vultures hover, arms outstretched like guardians of the dead. Snakes, boars, scorpions, all painstakingly carved with deep symbolic intent. This was not primitive decoration, this was language in its earliest, most sacred form. But perhaps the strangest fact about Göbekli Tepe is that its creators intentionally buried it. Around 8000 BCE, they filled in their own temples, carefully, deliberately, almost ritualistically, preserving them beneath layers of earth. Why would a society hide something so monumental? Some suggest it was to protect it from outsiders, from changing climate, or even from themselves. Others wonder if the builders were disappearing, if their knowledge was dying, and this was their time capsule to the future. Even more radical theories suggest Göbekli Tepe is not the origin, but the echo of something older, that its builders may have been survivors of a lost civilization, perhaps even connected to the end of the Younger Dryas, a sudden cooling period around 10,850 BCE. That cataclysm, possibly caused by a comet or cosmic event, may have wiped out a culture far older than we currently acknowledge. And in the aftermath, maybe some memory of what came before lived on, not in cities or machines, but in stone, carved into sacred forms, preserved through myth. The vulture stone, one of Göbekli Tepe's most famous carvings, has even been interpreted by some researchers as a star map, possibly recording the date of a catastrophic astronomical event around 10,950 BCE. If true, it would mean the people at Göbekli Tepe had a sophisticated understanding of the heavens long before any known civilization. But such ideas are controversial, fringe even. Mainstream archaeology remains cautious. Yet even the most conservative interpretations agree. Göbekli Tepe changes everything. It proves that humans gathered, worshipped, designed, and built complex structures before farming, before cities, before all the things we thought made civilization possible. And that revelation opens a door. If something this sophisticated existed over 12,000 years ago, what else might be buried, forgotten, waiting? What if this is just the tip of an enormous archaeological iceberg? Since its discovery in the 1990s, only a tiny fraction of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Many more stone circles lie hidden under the soil, and other nearby sites, Karahunj, Navali, suggest a lost tradition of megalithic architecture stretching across the region, older than myth, older than history. So was Göbekli Tepe the beginning of civilization, or the last memory of something far older? Was it the birthplace of religion, or a sacred monument built by survivors, trying to pass on something we still don't understand? Stand at its edge as the sun rises over those strange, silent stones, and you feel it. A presence, not just of history, but of something deeper. An ancient whisper that says, "You are not the first. You are not the beginning."
In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, nestled between mountains and time, stands a platform of stones so massive, so precise, and so mysterious that even today, with all our cranes, satellites, and algorithms, we can't explain how it was built. This is Baalbek. To the casual visitor, Baalbek is known for its towering Roman columns, ruins of the ancient temple complex dedicated to Jupiter, Venus, and Bacchus. But what lies beneath those columns is far older and far stranger. The Temple of Jupiter rests on a gigantic stone platform, a foundation composed of cyclopean blocks so large they defy belief. Some stones are over 60 feet long, 14 feet high, and weigh an estimated 800 to 1,200 tons each. That's not a typo. Over 1,000 tons,
more than a fully loaded Boeing 747. For comparison, the blocks in the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh about 2.5 tons each. Baalbek stones are over 400 times heavier. And the question is simple. How were they moved? These megaliths weren't just placed near the temple. They were precisely fitted, elevated several meters above ground level, laid into the very foundation. And they weren't moved a few feet. They were transported from a quarry over half a mile away across uneven terrain. One of the largest, the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, was left partially cut in the quarry itself. It weighs an estimated 1,050 tons. Even more astonishingly, in 2014, archaeologists discovered an even larger stone beneath it, weighing at least 1,600 tons. No known ancient or modern technology has successfully demonstrated how to move such a stone intact, let alone lift it and place it with millimeter-level precision. The Romans, we're told, built the visible temple in the 1st century CE. But even Roman records never claimed credit for the megalithic platform beneath. In fact, many scholars believe the base predates Rome for thousands of years. Yet no one knows who built it, why it was built so large, or how they accomplished it. Some argue it was ceremonial, an exaggerated expression of devotion. Others say it was astronomical, aligned with celestial bodies, perhaps as a calendar or ritual site. But the truth is, these are guesses, because the people who built the foundation left no written records, no tools, no signs of their technology. Only stone. Silent, impossibly massive. The theories range from the orthodox to the unthinkable. Some engineers suggest that dozens, perhaps even hundreds of people could have moved the stones using ropes, wooden rollers, or earth ramps. But that theory collapses under scrutiny. There's no evidence of such infrastructure, and even modern heavy lift cranes would struggle with such weights. Alternative researchers propose more radical explanations, from the use of forgotten anti-gravity principles to advanced ancient machinery now lost to time. Others speculate that Baalbek was once a spaceport for gods or sky beings, drawing from local legends that speak of divine construction. It sounds far-fetched until you realize that even the most conservative scholars can't explain how these stones were moved. In fact, many simply ignore the foundation altogether, focusing instead on the Roman temple above, as if the base were mere anomaly. But it's not. It's the key. Because Baalbek challenges our fundamental assumptions. It suggests that in deep prehistory, someone possessed engineering knowledge that has since vanished. Knowledge capable of quarrying, transporting, and assembling stones so massive they mock the limits of today's machinery. And the strangeness doesn't stop there. According to some interpretations, Baalbek's site may have been used for over 9,000 years, continuously occupied, rebuilt, and adapted across cultures and empires. Phoenician, Greek, Roman, Islamic, each layered their own architecture on top of what was already ancient. But no one dared remove or alter the great stones below, as if they were sacred or untouchable. Local legend claimed the giants of old built Baalbek, beings of immense strength who walked the earth before humanity as we know it. In Arabic, the ruins were once known as the Fortress of Baal, associated with the ancient storm god Baal. The Bible even references Baalbek's region under its older name, Heliopolis, the city of the sun. But whether built by giants, gods, or forgotten humans, the purpose remains elusive. What kind of society had the resources and the reason to create such a structure? Was it a temple, a launch site, a signal to the heavens? Or was it something more primal, a place of power, magnetism, and celestial alignment? Some claim Baalbek stones sit atop an energy grid or ley line. Others believe they were placed to anchor something no longer here. Stand before them and you feel it, a hum in your bones, not from sound, but from scale, from presence. Baalbek is more than ruins. It's a monument to the impossible, to the forgotten, to something beyond our grasp. Whatever its origin, it serves as a warning and a promise that our ancestors were not as primitive as we once believed, that the deeper we dig into the past, the more our history begins to look like a myth, and our myths like forgotten history. And Baalbek remains heavy, silent, unmoved.
High on the windswept Altiplano of Bolivia, 12,800 feet above sea level, lies a ruin that should not exist. A site so precise, so advanced, that even in our age of lasers and automation, it still baffles the brightest minds. This is Puma Punku, a name whispered with reverence among ancient mystery seekers, a place archaeologists call part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, but it is so much more than that. Puma Punku is not known for towering pyramids or colorful murals. It is known for its stones and the way they were carved. Massive andesite and red sandstone blocks, some weighing up to 130 tons, lie scattered across the ground like the remains of a shattered machine. But among the rubble are the famous H blocks, stones carved with a level of geometrical perfection that seems impossible for any Bronze Age culture. These H-shaped blocks, identical in size and form, feature precisely cut right angles, smooth internal grooves, uniform holes, and complex interlocking notches. They were clearly meant to fit together like components of a modular system, not unlike modern concrete forms or prefabricated architecture. But here's the problem. The people of Tiwanaku had no metal tools beyond hammerstones, no writing, no known measuring system, and no wheel. So how were these stones shaped with such detail and consistency using only stone tools? The precision is staggering. Some internal cuts show accuracy to within a fraction of a millimeter. Drill marks, flat planes, and perfect 90-degree angles, all in a brittle volcanic rock that requires diamond-tipped equipment to replicate today. Even our most sophisticated workshops would struggle to produce such flawless work on-site, in a remote highland plateau, with no infrastructure and at extreme altitude. Mainstream archaeology claims it was done slowly, by hand, using perseverance and ingenuity, and perhaps some of it was. But even that explanation avoids the larger mystery. Why go to such extraordinary effort? Why carve such sophisticated forms in such hard material if the only goal was to build a temple? The layout of Puma Punku suggests something more complex. The interlocking design of the blocks, combined with channels and sockets, has led some to believe the site may have supported a kind of hydraulic or mechanical system, perhaps even electromagnetic properties. Others speculate the H-blocks were once part of a vast stone platform or enclosure, perfectly aligned to cardinal directions and celestial events. More radical thinkers go further. They propose that Puma Punku was a kind of technological relic, the remains of a lost civilization or advanced culture erased by time. They point to the sudden appearance of such precision, the lack of transitional tools or prototypes, and the abrupt decline of the Tiwanaku culture as signs that Puma Punku is not simply incomplete, but a ruin of something older. Some suggest that cataclysm, like a global flood or cosmic impact, destroyed the original site, scattering the stones and leaving behind only the indestructible pieces.
that what we see now is just the skeleton of a far greater complex, one that once stood in perfect symmetry before it was torn apart by forces unknown. Satellite imagery has shown that the broader Tiwanaku region was once home to vast agricultural and canal systems, evidence of a highly organized and possibly centralized society. Yet, despite these signs of sophistication, the people who built Puma Punku vanished with little explanation. No battle, no disease, no migration. Just silence. And the silence grows louder the more you study the stones. Because the most disturbing part of Puma Punku is not what we see, it's what we don't. There are no detailed records, no inscriptions describing its purpose, no origin story in the archaeological record, only oral legends, such as those of the Aymara people that speak of Viracocha, a bearded god who emerged from the waters and taught mankind how to build and shape the world. In these myths, Viracocha didn't just visit Puma Punku, he created it. In a single night. A metaphor? Maybe. But perhaps also a memory distorted by time of a long-lost era when knowledge was greater than we remember. Engineers who've examined the site often leave stunned. Some admit that recreating Puma Punku today, at that location, at that scale, with those materials, would be a massive challenge. And yet we are expected to believe it was carved with pounding stones and patience, with no guides, no machines, and no plans. So what was Puma Punku? A ceremonial site? A machine base? A portal between worlds? Or was it all three? A fusion of sacred geometry, lost science, and cosmic memory. Today it lies in ruins, but the stones still speak. Not in language, but in precision, in the clean lines of the H-blocks, in the impossible cuts of the andesite, in the weight and the silence. Puma Punku does not fit in the box of traditional history. It breaks the box, and it reminds us that the further we dig into the past, the clearer it becomes we have forgotten more than we remember. And there was a time when stone was softer than memory.
On the wind-swept plains of Salisbury in southern England, a ring of ancient stone stands against time itself, weathered, worn, but unyielding. For thousands of years, Stonehenge has watched the sun rise and fall as civilizations rose and crumbled around it. It is one of the most iconic and recognizable ancient monuments on Earth, and yet, we still don't know why it was built. Stonehenge was constructed in multiple phases, beginning around 3100 BCE, with the familiar large sarsen stones raised by about 2500 BCE. But what remains is only the final version of a structure that may have changed many times across centuries, evolving with the people who used it. The outer ring, made of upright sarsen stones, each weighing up to 25 tons, is topped with horizontal lintel stones, perfectly balanced and locked with mortise and tenon joints, a carpentry technique rendered in stone. Inside this ring is a horseshoe of 5 trilithons, even taller, standing like ancient doorways to nowhere. But it's what happens above and below the monument that has stirred generations of mystery. Because Stonehenge is more than just architecture, it's aligned with the cosmos. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, casting its rays through the central axis of the monument. On the winter solstice, the sun sets in perfect alignment through the same path, a design that has led many to conclude that Stonehenge is a kind of solar calendar, marking the turning points of the year. But it's not just the sun. The 56 Aubrey holes, a ring of pits that surrounds the stone circle, have been interpreted as a lunar calendar, tracking the 18.6-year cycle of the moon's rise and fall. Some researchers even claim the site could predict eclipses
by counting and aligning stones with complex celestial rhythms. If true, this suggests an incredibly sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, far beyond what we typically credit to Neolithic peoples. There are no written records, no mathematical texts, and yet, the monument speaks in the language of the stars. But is that all it was? Just a calendar carved in stone? Or was it something more? Evidence suggests that Stonehenge was also a sacred burial site. Excavations have revealed cremated human remains in and around the site, not just from one era, but across centuries. Some of the buried were elite individuals transported from distant regions. Others show signs of illness or injury, suggesting Stonehenge may have been a place of pilgrimage and healing, a kind of ancient Lourdes where people sought the power of the stones. The blue stones, smaller than the sarcens, but still weighing several tons, were transported from Wales, over 150 miles away. Some legends say they were magical, capable of healing wounds and curing sickness. Why else would ancient people drag them across rivers, forests, and hills, all to place them here? Some believe the stones were meant to vibrate, that their shape, material, and arrangement may have resonated with sound, frequency, or ritual music. Could Stonehenge have once been a sonic temple, designed not just to mark time, but to move it? Alternative theories suggest the site was part of a much larger ritual landscape, a vast ceremonial complex connecting Stonehenge with other nearby sites like Durrington Walls, Woodhenge, and the mysterious Avenue. These alignments trace solar and lunar paths, rivers, and even the Milky Way. In this view, Stonehenge was a gateway between worlds, between the land of the living and the land of the dead, between earth and sky, between time and eternity. And then there's the enigma of how it was built. How did people 4,500 years ago lift multi-ton stones into vertical and horizontal position without cranes, pulleys, or wheels? How did they shape the sarsen blocks so precisely that they interlock like timber frames, despite only having stone and bone tools? Experimental archaeologists have tried to replicate the methods. Some success has been found, dragging stones on sledges, using wooden levers, and building earth ramps. But scaling up those techniques to the full monument, with the precision and layout we see today, remains a colossal mystery. And most astonishing of all, Stonehenge was part of a cycle. After hundreds of years, its importance declined. People stopped using it. Stones were moved, broken, or repurposed. Whatever meaning it once held faded. Or maybe it was never meant to last forever. Maybe its message wasn't carved in permanence, but in pattern, in light and shadow, in silence and stone. Some modern thinkers suggest it was a portal, not a literal gateway, but a map of the human experience, of birth, death, time, and the divine. A place to feel small beneath the sky, and yet connected to everything. So, what is Stonehenge? A clock made of monoliths? A temple to the sun and moon? A sonic sanctuary? Or a riddle we were never meant to solve? Whatever it is, it still works. Stand among the stones as the solstice sun rises, and you feel it. The line, the light, the quiet awe of a people who reached up, not to control time, but to honor it. Stonehenge doesn't answer our questions, it asks them. And in doing so, it reminds us that the greatest mysteries are the ones that endure.
High on the rugged, windswept plains of southern Armenia lies a field of stones, worn, lichen-covered, and silent. To the casual traveler, it may seem like a scattered graveyard or a natural formation. But this is no accident of nature. This is Karahunj, often called the Armenian Stonehenge, and it may be the oldest observatory in the world. Spread across a plateau more than 5,000 feet above sea level, Karahunj, also known as Zorat's Karer, consists of over 200 basalt megaliths, many of them standing upright in deliberate alignments. The site is believed by some researchers to be more than 7,500 years old, predating Stonehenge by thousands of years. Some of the stones are pierced with small, circular holes, about 5 centimeters wide, drilled all the way through the rock, not randomly, but angled upward towards specific points in the sky. Why? Armenian astrophysicist Paris Heruni, who studied Karahunj in the 1990s, believed these were telescopic sighting tubes used by ancient astronomers to track the positions of stars, particularly Deneb, the brightest star in the Cygnus constellation, and even more surprisingly, Orion. He claimed that Karahunj functioned as a stellar observatory as far back as 5500 BCE, and that the holes were aligned to track celestial bodies with incredible accuracy. If true, this would mean that ancient Armenians were charting the stars millennia before Babylon or Egypt, and long before the advent of writing. Mainstream archaeology, however, is cautious. Most scholars date the site to the Bronze Age, perhaps 1500 BCE, and interpret it as a necropolis, a sacred burial site. The stones without holes may have marked tombs, and the alignments could be symbolic rather than scientific. But here's where the mystery deepens. Whether Karahunj was an observatory, a cemetery, or something more, the layout cannot be ignored. Many stones are aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles, much like other ancient megalithic sites around the world. Some stones point due north, others toward sunrise or moonrise at key times of the year. Even more intriguing is the central circular formation, a ring of stones echoing structures like Stonehenge or Nabta Playa. Why do cultures separated by thousands of miles and millennia all create these stone circles? Is it a coincidence, a shared idea, or evidence of a lost and ancient system of knowledge? The similarities are uncanny, and Karahunj predates them all. The holes in the stones remain one of the site's most debated features. They are not crude. They are smooth, uniform, and perfectly round. Not drilled recently, but ancient. Some say they resemble sighting devices, similar to those used by astronomers to this day, where light from a star can be tracked as it crosses a fixed aperture. If this is correct, Karahunj may have been a planetarium in stone, where ancient priests or astronomers tracked the heavens, marked the passage of time, and even calculated celestial events. But the questions don't end there. Why here? Why in the highlands of Armenia, a place far removed from these supposed cradles of civilization? What inspired these ancient people to carve hundreds of stones, align them with stars, and build something that could outlast empires? One theory points to Cygnus, the swan-shaped constellation, which may have held special importance for many ancient cultures. Deneb, its brightest star, is one of the 3 points of the Summer Triangle, a powerful asterism visible in the northern hemisphere. In Armenian mythology, the sky was seen as a vast cosmic river, and stars like Deneb were guides for the soul's journey into the afterlife. So perhaps Karahunj was both observatory and sanctuary,
a place where the living studied the stars and the dead began their return to them. In that way, it mirrors other enigmatic sites like Göbekli Tepe or Chaco Canyon, where astronomy, ritual, and architecture were fused into a single purpose: to connect earth and sky. And then there's the name. Karahunj is believed to mean speaking stones, a name that hints at another mystery. Local folklore holds that the stones whisper when the wind passes through their holes. Some say they speak to those who listen. Others believe the name reflects oral tradition passed down through generations, that the stones were seen not just as markers, but as messengers. Messengers from whom or what? Today, Karahunj remains largely unguarded and uncelebrated. No ticket booths, no museums, just the stones, the sky, and the wind. But perhaps that's how it should be. Because Karahunj isn't just a place to visit, it's a place to feel. To stand among its ancient sentinels as the stars emerge in the cold Armenian night. To trace your fingers along their weathered surfaces and wonder, who were they? What did they know? And how did they see the stars so long ago? Karahunj doesn't offer easy answers. It offers alignment, stillness, and the lingering sense that something very old once watched the heavens from here.
In the high desert of northwestern New Mexico, where the sun scorches red mesas and silence rolls across endless dust, lies a place built with purpose and precision, so advanced that its true function remains elusive even now. This is Chaco Canyon. To the untrained eye, it's a scattering of ruins, stone walls and broken towers nestled in a wide, arid valley. But to those who look closer, Chaco is something far more: a calendar, a compass, and perhaps a cosmic clock. Constructed between 850 and 1150 CE, Chaco Canyon became the heart of a civilization that defies explanation. The ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Chacoans, built over a dozen great houses, massive multi-story structures made of sandstone and wood, some containing hundreds of rooms, towering as high as 4 stories, with vast ceremonial kivas embedded in their design. One of these, Pueblo Bonito, had more than 650 rooms. It was the largest building in North America for over 700 years. But the scale isn't what makes Chaco strange. It's the geometry. Nearly every major structure in Chaco Canyon is aligned with celestial events: solstices, equinoxes, lunar standstills. Buildings line up with the rising and setting of the sun at key points in the solar year. Sightlines extend between distant buttes and rock formations. Window and door placements frame light and shadow in ways that only make sense on specific days of the year. It's not just decoration, it's coded time. Take the famous Sun Dagger site on Fajada Butte. There, 3 stone slabs cast slivers of light onto a spiral carved into the rock. On the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight slices through the center of the spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers frame it perfectly. The effect is so precise, as if the sun itself was used as a stylus to carve time into stone. Who figured this out, and how? The Chacoans had no metal tools, no writing system, and no telescopes, but they clearly possessed a deep and systematic knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and geometry. They observed the skies, tracked lunar cycles, and embedded that knowledge into their architecture.
Entire buildings became solar observatories. But not just one building. Entire city plans appear to radiate outward in geometric relationships that echo constellations and solstitial points. Some researchers suggest Chaco was not merely a city, but a ritual landscape, a kind of living calendar where architecture, ceremony, and cosmos were in constant dialogue. And this ritual landscape was vast. Radiating from the canyon are more than 400 miles of straight roads, some nearly 30 feet wide, that cut across the terrain with unnatural precision. These roads often lead nowhere. No villages, no water, just open desert. But some align with cardinal directions, mountain peaks, or astronomical events. Could they have been pilgrimage routes or celestial pathways designed for processions timed with the heavens? No one can say for sure. Even the materials used in Chaco's construction raise questions. Timber was hauled from forests over 60 miles away across barren plateaus in vast quantities. And yet the desert around Chaco couldn't support permanent agriculture. There were no nearby rivers and rainfall was sparse. So why build something so massive in such a hostile place? Some theorists believe Chaco was not a city in the traditional sense, not a residential hub, but a ceremonial center, a sacred space where people from far-flung regions gathered for solstice rituals, lunar festivals, and seasonal offerings. Others propose a more provocative idea, that Chaco's precision, its astronomical knowledge, and its mysterious alignments point to a legacy of lost knowledge, a thread of advanced understanding passed down from cultures long forgotten, encoded in stone. Alternative researchers go even further. Some believe Chaco's geometry reflects a knowledge of Earth energy grids, harmonic resonance, or even electromagnetic properties, that the great houses weren't just ceremonial spaces, but frequency chambers, where sound, structure, and starlight converged. Stranger still, the Great North Road, a perfectly straight path leading from Chaco to the north, has been theorized to align with lunar standstill cycles, which occur every 18.6 years. Some say it mirrors the Milky Way, creating a bridge between Earth and the cosmos. The idea? That Chaco wasn't just observing the sky, it was mirroring it. But if all this is true, what happened to the Chacoans? By the late 1100s, the site was mysteriously abandoned. No war, no conquest, just disappearance. Climate change may have played a role, drought, resource depletion, but the grandeur of Chaco suggests it was more than just a failed farming town. Maybe its purpose was simply fulfilled. Maybe the stars no longer aligned. Today, Chaco Canyon stands in silence, its walls cracked, its solar paths faded, but its message endures, in shadows that fall just right, in spirals etched into rock, in doorways that frame the sun. It tells us that long before telescopes or satellites, humans were watching the sky, measuring it, mirroring it, living by it. Chaco is a place where stone tells time, where the earth and heavens meet, where mystery isn't a question, but a structure.
Off the eastern shore of the island of Pohnpei, hidden in the vast blue heart of the Pacific, lies the crumbling skeleton of a lost world, Nan Madol, a city built on coral reefs, a city of canals, of silence, and of stone. Not just any stone, but thousands upon thousands of massive basalt columns, carefully stacked like a giant prehistoric Lego set, rising from the sea like a myth made real. It is, by every measure, one of the most mysterious ancient sites on Earth. Nan Madol consists of over 90 artificial islets constructed atop a lagoon, with canals running between them like the veins of a drowned metropolis. This megalithic city was once home to temples, tombs, platforms, and ceremonial centers, a kind of Venice of the Pacific. But unlike Venice, which rests on millions of wooden pilings, Nan Madol was built from pure volcanic stone. Each basalt log, hexagonal, crystalline, and heavy, weighs anywhere from 5 to 50 tons. And yet somehow, these stones were transported across open ocean, lifted onto reef platforms, and stacked with such precision that many walls still stand after 1,000 years of tides and typhoons. How? No one really knows. Mainstream archaeology attributes the city's construction to the Saudalur dynasty, around 1100 CE. But local legend and the sheer scale of the engineering suggest a much deeper mystery. Oral traditions speak of two brothers, the sorcerers Olosapa and Olisipa, who arrived on a canoe from a distant land. Possessing supernatural powers, they summoned the great stones through magic, calling them through the air to rise and float into place. Fantastic? Yes. But look closer, and even modern scientists are puzzled. The nearest source of the basalt columns is over 25 miles away, across mountainous terrain and open sea. There are no signs of roads, no sleds, no cart tracks, no ramps. And the sheer number of stones, estimated to be upwards of 250,000 tons of material, makes the official explanation of manpower and canoes feel at best incomplete. The layout of Nan Madol also raises questions. The islets are arranged in a kind of sacred grid, some reserved for the living, others for the dead. The central complex, Nandawas, housed the tombs of the ruling elite, surrounded by 25-foot-high basalt walls. No one else was allowed to live there. In fact, Nan Madol was a forbidden city. The Saudalur rulers, who claimed divine right, forced the nobility to relocate from the mainland into these artificial islands, isolating the elite from the common people and surrounding them with water as a symbol of both power and control. But that control didn't last. According to legend, the Saudalur dynasty was overthrown by a warrior named Isokelekel, who led an invasion from a distant land. He brought with him new customs, new gods, and a new vision. The city began to fall into ruin not long after. Some believe it was never truly completed, abandoned as its construction became impossible or its purpose lost. And yet Nan Madol remains, empty, haunted, swallowed by vines and salt. Today, no one lives there. Local Pohnpeians refuse to visit the ruins after dark. They speak of ghosts, curses, and spirits that walk the stone paths when the moon is high. Even researchers have reported unease. Electronics malfunction, compasses spin, and silence becomes oppressive. But what exactly was Nan Madol? Was it a royal complex? A spiritual portal? A water-bound observatory for the stars? Or something even older than the Saudalur dynasty? A site built upon the bones of a civilization already long forgotten. One theory suggests that Nan Madol's origins stretch far deeper into prehistory, possibly linked to rising sea levels after the last ice age. If so, it may have been part of a much larger landmass, a lost Pacific culture known in legend as Lemuria or Mu. Though dismissed by conventional scholars, these stories speak of a time when great stone cities dotted the islands of the Pacific,
only to be drowned by the rising seas. What if Nan Madol is not the first of its kind, but the last? The engineering challenges alone are staggering. How did ancient builders lift such heavy stones onto floating platforms without sinking them? How did they align the islet so perfectly without aerial perspective? And most of all, why here, in the middle of nowhere, in the heart of a remote ocean, far from the power centers of the ancient world? What knowledge was preserved, and what was lost? Some say the answer lies beneath, that parts of Nan Madol are now underwater, perhaps buried remnants of a time before time waiting to be rediscovered. But few dive there. Fewer still speak of it, as if the city itself doesn't want to be found. Stand in the middle of Nan Madol, surrounded by broken columns and the slow lap of seawater, and it feels like stepping into a forgotten memory, not just of a place, but of an age. A time when humanity understood the sea not as a barrier, but as a pathway. When stone cities rose from coral, and when gods and kings lived side by side. Nan Madol should not exist, but it does, and its silence is louder than history.
In the heart of Maharashtra, India, carved deep into the basalt cliffs of the Western Ghats, lies one of the most mysterious and astonishing feats of ancient engineering ever attempted by human hands. This is Kailasa Temple, Cave 16 of the Ellora Caves. But this isn't a cave in the traditional sense. It's a freestanding temple cut from a single solid rock, and not built stone by stone, but carved from the top down, chiseled directly from the mountain itself. Let that settle in. It's not assembled, it's not made of pieces. It is one seamless, monolithic structure sculpted downward from a mountain, removing over 200,000 tons of volcanic rock in the process. No scaffolding, no cranes, no margin for error. To carve 1 inch too far would be to destroy the entire structure. And yet, they didn't. What stands today is a temple nearly 100 feet tall, covering an area twice the size of the Parthenon, adorned with sculptures, corridors, shrines, columns, stairways, and ornate deities, all chiseled into stone like a divine 3D blueprint executed in absolute perfection. But the strangest part? No one knows who ordered its construction. No inscriptions, no dedicatory text, no records detailing how long it took, who designed it, or how it was even achieved. Mainstream historians attribute the Kailasa Temple to the 8th century Rashtrakuta king Krishna I, claiming it was completed within just 18 years, an assertion based primarily on indirect references in later texts. But think about that timeline. To remove 200,000 tons of solid rock in 18 years would require cutting and hauling away 25 tons per day, every day, without fail, using only chisels and hammers. Not just crude demolition, but surgical precision, delicate sculpting, hidden chambers, and mathematically perfect symmetry, all while working blind from the top down. Engineers and architects today marvel at it. Many admit that replicating such a feat with this scale and accuracy, even using modern tools and machinery, would be a massive logistical challenge. Yet it was supposedly done over a millennium ago, with no cranes, no explosives, and no advanced surveying tools. And the architectural style? It's a mystery in itself. The Kailasa Temple appears to draw on multiple traditions, North Indian, South Indian, even Himalayan, unified in a way that suggests deep symbolic intent.
Some parts mirror the layout of Mount Kailas, the mythical Himalayan abode of Lord Shiva. Others contain mathematical patterns, astronomical motifs, and sacred proportions found in Vedic cosmology. But again, there is no master plan, no drawings survive, no ancient manual, only the result. Some researchers believe the builders must have possessed an incredibly advanced understanding of geometry, structural engineering, and perhaps even acoustic resonance. The echo chambers in the temple are engineered to amplify chants, a spiritual technology embedded within stone. But how this was done without formal tools or recorded measurements remains unexplained. Others go further. They suggest Kailasa Temple may not be an original creation, but a recreation, a stone-for-stone replica of a much older structure that once stood elsewhere. That this temple is not the beginning, but a memory carved in permanence. Alternative theories suggest the use of lost technology, tools or methods no longer part of human knowledge. Could ancient builders have known ways to soften stone, or used sound and frequency to erode material? Legends from other parts of India even speak of sages who could melt rock with chants. Myths, perhaps, but ones that linger. Local folklore adds yet another layer of mystery. Some say the temple was carved in a single night by a celestial architect, answering the prayer of a devoted queen. Others believe it was the work of divine beings or asuras, ancient engineers from the realms of mythology. While easy to dismiss as fantasy, these tales reflect something real, a recognition, even by those who lived near it, that this structure was not ordinary. And the mystery deepens further. Despite centuries of exposure to monsoons, earthquakes, and invasions, Kailasa has not collapsed. Its pillars still stand, its sculpture still sings. Unlike most ancient temples that crumble with time, Kailasa seems immune, as if the mountain itself protects its hidden heart. And unlike most grand constructions, it is subtractive, not additive. No bricks, no seams, just absence. The temple emerged by removing what wasn't temple. A sculptural process so delicate, one wrong strike could have meant ruin. So what was it? A shrine to Shiva? A celestial map? A resonance chamber built for gods? Or a message carved into the bones of the earth to remind us that ancient people were far more capable than we imagine? Stand within the inner sanctum, and you're surrounded by a silence that feels different, heavier, almost alive. The air doesn't just echo, it listens. Kailasa Temple wasn't built, it was revealed. One strike at a time, a mountain transformed into a prayer. And to this day, no one knows how or why, only that it exists, and that its very existence rewrites everything we thought we knew about what ancient hands could do.
Thousands of miles from any major landmass lies Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. And yet, here, on this tiny volcanic island in the South Pacific, stand nearly 1,000 massive statues carved from volcanic tuff. They are called moai, and they have baffled historians, archaeologists, and astronomers for centuries. Each statue weighs several tons, with the tallest reaching over 30 feet. Some were never finished, lying half-carved in the quarries, as if the people who made them simply vanished. The mystery of how these towering figures were moved across miles of rugged terrain without wheels, draft animals, or cranes remains unresolved. The terrain is uneven and steep, and yet the Rapa Nui somehow transported these stone giants from the volcanic quarry at Rano Raraku to platforms all over the island.
Local legend says the statues walked, not metaphorically, but literally. According to oral traditions, the ancestors imbued the moai with spiritual power called mana, which enabled them to walk upright to their destinations. This may sound like folklore, but remarkably, modern experiments have shown that using ropes and coordinated tilting motions, a small team could make a moai walk upright across the land. Still, this theory doesn't explain how hundreds of statues were moved without mass deforestation, especially when such deforestation may have contributed to the collapse of the society itself. Yet it's not just how the moai were moved that stirs questions. It's why they were built in the first place and what their positioning means. Most of the statues face inward, toward the villages, as if watching over the people. They stand on stone platforms known as ahu, which are often burial sites. The moai, then, may represent deified ancestors, guardians of lineage and land. But not all of them follow this pattern. Some face outward, toward the sea or toward the stars. This raises deeper questions. Were these exceptions simply symbolic, or were they aligned with something greater? Recent research shows that many ahu platforms and moai are positioned in alignment with astronomical events, especially solar positions during solstices and equinoxes. For example, Ahu Akivi, one of the few inland moai sites, contains 7 statues that face the rising sun during the spring equinox and the setting sun during the autumn equinox. These alignments are precise. Could this mean the Rapa Nui used these figures not only as spiritual guardians, but as cosmic markers, as part of an ancient calendar? Even more perplexing is the island's layout itself. Some believe the moai sites are arranged in patterns that reflect star constellations. Others argued that the moai may have functioned like Polynesian star compasses used for celestial navigation across the ocean. Given the Polynesians' advanced seafaring skills and their reliance on the stars to traverse thousands of miles, this is not far-fetched. But Easter Island has more secrets buried in its soil. Beneath many moai lie full torsos, arms, and hands, revealing that these heads are actually full statues, their bodies gradually buried by time and erosion. The complexity of their design is extraordinary. Some even have detailed carvings on their backs, including symbols and patterns whose meanings are unknown. Are these symbols mere decoration, or do they encode lost knowledge? Then there is the enigmatic Rongo script, a system of glyphs carved into wooden tablets discovered on the island. It remains undeciphered to this day. Some scholars think it may be one of the few independent inventions of writing in human history. Others argue it developed after contact with Europeans, inspired by Western writing. But the script's origin, meaning, and use are all unclear. If it truly predates European contact, it could represent a lost corpus of knowledge, history, cosmology, genealogy, that may never be recovered. The timeline of Easter Island's rise and collapse is filled with mystery. The peak of moai construction occurred between 1100 and 1500 CE, after which the society appears to have entered a period of environmental collapse and internal conflict. Trees were cut down, possibly to aid in moving the statues, leading to soil degradation and the end of canoe building. Without canoes, fishing declined. Wars followed. Some moai were toppled. The island's once thriving civilization crumbled into ruin. But was this collapse purely environmental, or were there deeper forces at play? Some theories suggest outside contact long before Europeans arrived, pointing to supposed transoceanic similarities in art, architecture, or myth between Polynesia and South America. Others invoke the idea of lost ancient knowledge, navigation, astronomy, or spirituality preserved in the moai and lost with their makers. Even now, scientists and researchers cannot agree on the full picture. Were the Moai just religious symbols? Were they tools of social cohesion? Or were they part of something more? A forgotten science of earth and stars, encoded in stone. Easter Island is a riddle written in basalt, staring silently across the ages. The statues do not speak, but in their silence, they invite questions science still cannot answer. Who were the Rapa Nui before collapse? How much did they know about the heavens above and the forces of nature? And what secrets lie beneath the earth, under those buried Moai, waiting to be unearthed? In the end, it's not just the size of the statues that astonishes, it's the depth of their mystery.
The modern world is built on concrete. Highways, bridges, skyscrapers, entire cities rest upon this mixture of cement, aggregate, and water. Yet for our technological prowess, our concrete cracks, weathers, and disintegrates in just decades. Meanwhile, ancient Roman concrete, fashioned more than 2,000 years ago, still holds strong, undaunted by time, tides, or tremors. Across the Mediterranean, remnants of the Roman Empire stand defiantly intact. The Pantheon in Rome, with its massive, unreinforced concrete dome, is still the largest of its kind. The aqueducts that once carried water from distant springs still stretch for miles. The ports, like the harbor at Kosa, have endured centuries of waves and salt without crumbling. Modern marine concrete would disintegrate within decades under similar conditions. So what secret did the Romans possess? The mystery of Roman concrete has long baffled engineers and scientists alike. For years, researchers studied its durability, but the answer remained elusive. Traditional theories credited volcanic ash from Pozzuoli near Naples, known as pozzolana, as the magic ingredient. When mixed with lime and seawater, the ash created a chemical reaction that hardened over time. But recent investigations have revealed something even more astonishing. In 2017, a team of researchers from the University of Utah analyzed samples of Roman marine concrete under powerful microscopes and discovered something unexpected: crystalline structures known as aluminum tobermorite and philipsite. These minerals, rare and extremely strong, had not been intentionally added. They had formed naturally over centuries as the seawater interacted with the concrete's ingredients. Rather than deteriorating in water, Roman concrete grew stronger. This phenomenon turns modern engineering on its head. Today's concrete is designed to be inert. Once it sets, the chemical process is considered complete. Roman concrete, by contrast, was alive, reactive, evolving, and self-healing. The seawater that would corrode modern structures actually improved the Roman formula over time. But here's the real twist. The Romans didn't fully understand the science behind their success. Their knowledge was empirical, based on centuries of trial and error, passed through generations of builders. Vitruvius, a Roman architect writing in the 1st century BCE, described ideal ingredients and mixing methods in his treatise De Architectura, but he offered little explanation as to why the materials worked so well. So, was it genius or accident? The composition of Roman concrete varied by region and purpose. Land-based concrete used different proportions than that of marine structures. Some were mixed hot, others cold. Yet what unites them all is a clear mastery of material, one grounded in intuition, observation, and localized knowledge of geology. They knew which sands clumped best, which rocks provided the strongest bonds, and how to cure mixtures under different conditions. Compare this to modern concrete, which is optimized for speed and cost. It sets fast, it's easy to pour, but it's also brittle, prone to cracking, and heavily reliant on steel reinforcement, which rusts over time, weakening the entire structure. Roman concrete needed no steel.
its strength was internal. In fact, some researchers now believe it could last thousands of years more. This raises a haunting question. Have we forgotten more than we've learned? In an age of digital blueprints and satellite-managed construction, it's humbling to realize that ancient builders may have outclassed us in one of the most fundamental aspects of civilization, building something to last. There are attempts today to recreate Roman concrete, but none have fully matched its long-term strength. Some experimental mixes, incorporating volcanic ash, show promise. Others mimic the mineral growth observed in the Roman structures, yet true replication remains just out of reach, in part because we still don't fully understand the complex geochemical reactions that occur over centuries, not just hours or days. And there's a deeper implication. Roman builders constructed with permanence in mind. Temples, aqueducts, amphitheaters, they were not just functional. They were designed to endure, to inspire awe through the ages. Our modern world, by contrast, often favors planned obsolescence. Bridges collapse, high-rises are torn down and rebuilt. Longevity is expensive, and short-term gain too often wins. But Roman concrete offers more than just a scientific puzzle. It's a philosophy, a way of thinking about architecture not as disposable, but as a legacy. To build not for the next quarterly report, but for the next century, or millennium. As climate change intensifies and infrastructure ages, the lesson of Roman concrete grows more urgent. We may not have fully decoded its secret yet, but the message is clear. There is wisdom in the past, buried in ruins, set in stone, and still holding strong. Maybe the question isn't just, what was their formula? Maybe it's, why did they care enough to build forever?
In the ancient ruins of Mesopotamia, carved into clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, lies one of the most enigmatic records in human history, the Sumerian King List. It reads like a straightforward chronicle, a sequential list of kings, their cities, and the lengths of their reigns. But buried within this list is something extraordinary. Some rulers are said to have reigned for hundreds, even thousands of years. According to the text, 8 antediluvian kings ruled for a combined total of 241,200 years before a great flood swept over the land. Only afterward did reign lengths start becoming more recognizable, centuries, then decades, then mere years. But this sudden shift from the godlike to the mundane has long puzzled historians, theologians, and researchers alike. Was this a symbolic narrative, a mythic structure meant to link kings with the divine? Or did the Sumerians genuinely believe that ancient rulers lived and ruled for lifespans beyond comprehension? The list itself isn't unique. Several versions have been found across different Sumerian cities such as Nippur, Larsa, and Ur. While there are minor discrepancies between versions, they generally agree on the most astonishing points. For example, Alulim, the first king of Eridu, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. His successors, Algar, Enmen-Luana, Enmen-Galana, also have reigns extending over tens of thousands of years. Some researchers interpret these reign lengths as metaphorical or astronomical. Could these years represent lunar cycles or symbolic calendar systems? If one year in the text referred to a shorter time unit, such as a month, the numbers become more plausible, though still unusual. But there's no direct textual evidence that the Sumerians were using a different calendar system here. In every other context, they measured time with remarkable precision, often using sexagenesimal, base 60 systems to track days, months, and years. Then there's the intriguing flood motif.
The King List makes a sharp division. Then the flood swept over. After the flood had swept over and the kingship had descended from heaven, kingship was in Kish. This mirrors flood narratives found in other ancient texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Bible's Genesis, and Hindu traditions. In each, there's a cataclysm, a reset, and a continuation of civilization under divine instruction. Why would the Sumerians fabricate such long reigns? One theory suggests these reign lengths were a way of asserting divine legitimacy. By portraying early kings as semi-divine beings with cosmic authority, later dynasties could draw a sacred lineage back to the origin of kingship itself, which notably is described in the list as having descended from heaven. This aligns with ancient Sumerian beliefs that kingship was a gift from the gods, a celestial institution, not a human one. Another possibility is that the King List was never meant to be strictly historical. Rather, it functioned as a cosmic timeline, blending myth and memory, theology and statecraft. The exaggerated lifespans could represent eras, dynasties, or even astrological ages compressed into the names of individual rulers. This wouldn't be unusual in ancient texts. The Bible attributes 900+ years to figures like Methuselah or Adam, possibly to illustrate wisdom or proximity to divine perfection. But there's a more speculative angle. What if the early entries are not myths, but memories? Some alternative historians propose that the list is a remnant of a forgotten chapter in human history, a time before recorded civilization, when knowledge, technology, or even non-human intelligences walked the earth. The sudden appearance of agriculture, writing, and advanced architecture in Sumer around 3100 BCE, seemingly out of nowhere, adds fuel to this hypothesis. Could the long-reigning kings of the list have been real entities, survivors of a lost civilization, visitors from elsewhere? Mainstream scholars reject this view, noting that no archaeological evidence supports the existence of human civilizations tens of thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia. But even they admit the purpose of the King List remains obscure. It doesn't match known historical patterns. It omits entire dynasties. It reshapes reality to fit a narrative we still don't fully understand. Strikingly, later rulers copied and preserved the list. They didn't alter the long reigns, they upheld them. Even as society moved toward realism and empiricism, the mythic structure remained sacred. Perhaps for the Sumerians, history wasn't about facts. It was about continuity, a living thread that connected gods, kings, and mortals. So was the Sumerian King List literal or symbolic? That may be the wrong question. It may be both, a myth cloaked in memory, or a memory dressed as myth. Either way, it stands as a reminder. The deeper we peer into the past, the blurrier the line between history and legend becomes.
In the baked plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, along the vanished course of the Saraswati and Indus rivers, lie the ruins of a civilization so advanced, so structured, and so mysteriously silent that its legacy has baffled generations of archaeologists. The Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization, emerged around 3300 BCE and flourished for over a millennium. Its cities were marvels of urban planning, baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, public baths, and standardized weights. Yet despite its monumental achievements, one central enigma remains unsolved: the script. Over 4,000 inscriptions have been found, on seals, pottery, tools, and tablets, composed of small symbols that repeat in ways suggesting grammar or syntax. Most inscriptions are short, typically between 4 to 26 signs long.
They appear meticulously carved, with consistent strokes and patterns, indicating a standardized system of writing, and yet no one can read them. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were eventually unlocked with the Rosetta Stone, the Indus script has no bilingual texts. No king's proclamation written in both Indus and Sumerian, no helpful translation etched into stone. This lack of a key is the single greatest barrier, but it's not the only one. The brevity of the inscriptions makes it difficult to analyze their structure. Are they names, titles, religious phrases, economic records? Some believe they might not be a script at all, that they could represent clan symbols, merchant marks, or even demonic devices. Others argue fiercely that the script is a full writing system, now lost to time. One of the most astonishing aspects of the Indus script is its consistency across such a vast geographical range. From Harappa in the north to Dolavira in the west and down to Lothal in the south, the same symbols recur. This implies centralized administration or cultural coherence. But the lack of long texts, no scrolls, no carved narratives, has led to endless debates about whether it was a spoken language transcribed phonetically or purely symbolic in nature. Scholars have proposed numerous theories. Some suggest it encoded a form of Dravidian language, possibly an ancestor of modern Tamil. Others point to connections with early Indo-Aryan, or even a lost linguistic isolate, a language with no known relatives. Computer scientists have tried using artificial intelligence to detect patterns, uncover statistical probabilities, or link the script to other known languages. Yet each time, the mystery only deepens. But perhaps the greatest question is not how to read it, but what the people of the Indus Valley were trying to say. This was a civilization without the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia or the grand pharaohs of Egypt. There are no obvious temples or royal tombs. Weapons are rare. There is little evidence of large-scale warfare or despotism. It's as if their cities were designed not to glorify rulers, but to serve the collective. Their writing, too, might reflect this. No long egoistic boasts, no grand proclamations carved into stone, just small inscriptions quietly impressed on everyday objects. One seal might show a unicorn-like animal with a few symbols. Another depicts a horned deity seated in a yogic pose accompanied by signs. Are these religious texts? Catalog entries? Names of traders, gods, cities? There are tantalizing signs that the Indus script was once on the cusp of being decipherable. In the 20th century, several tablets were found in Mesopotamia, far from the Indus, bearing Harappan seals, indicating trade. Could a future excavation unearth a bilingual text? Or will a forgotten artifact already in storage hold the key? For now, the Harappans remain voiceless. We can walk their streets, marvel at their sewage systems, ponder the scale of their city planning, but their thoughts, prayers, fears, and hopes are locked behind a curtain of silence. Every symbol on every seal feels like a whisper from a vanished world just out of reach. There is a strange irony in it. A civilization so sophisticated it built cities aligned with astronomical principles, managed complex economies, and possibly invented water-based transportation, and yet left behind a script we cannot read. In the end, we are left with symbols and silence. What if those 4,000 artifacts contain knowledge now lost forever? A medical system, a philosophical tradition, a warning, or perhaps a worldview radically different from our own, one that prized harmony, decentralization, and collective well-being over power and conquest. The Indus Valley Script is a mirror, not just into a lost civilization, but into the limits of modern understanding. It asks us not only what was written, but why we still cannot read it. And until we can, the Harappans, their lives, their beliefs, their thoughts, remain a ghostly presence, ever watching behind a wall of undeciphered signs.
Buried in the jungles of Mesoamerica, scattered across southern Mexico, lie stone faces that have watched the centuries pass in silence. They are massive, some over 10 feet tall and weighing more than 40 tons. With flat noses, thick lips, and mysterious helmets, the colossal heads of the Olmecs stare out from the ancient past. They are among the most iconic remnants of a people whose civilization seems to have appeared from nowhere and then vanished just as mysteriously. Who were the Olmecs? They are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Flourishing from around 1500 BCE to 400 BCE, long before the Maya or Aztec, the Olmecs were builders, artists, astronomers, and engineers. Their influence is seen in later cultures throughout the region. Ceremonial ball games, pyramid building, jaguar symbolism, and even blood sacrifice practices. Yet, despite their foundational impact, much about the Olmecs remains elusive. We don't know what they called themselves, we don't have their language, and we have no idea why they disappeared. What we do have are their artifacts, especially the colossal heads. 17 of these monolithic sculptures have been found to date, all carved from basalt, a volcanic rock transported from mountains sometimes over 50 miles away. The logistics are staggering. With no wheeled vehicles and no known domesticated draft animals, how did the Olmecs move these multi-ton stones across rivers, jungles, and rough terrain? No inscriptions accompany the heads. We can't read their names, their stories, or their purpose. Some scholars suggest they represent rulers, immortalized in stone, gazing eternally over their domains. Others believe they might depict warriors, perhaps even gods. The helmets they wear, sturdy, rounded, with ear flaps, resemble protective headgear, but their true meaning remains debated. Even more curiously, the facial features of the heads have sparked intense speculation. Some observers note that the wide noses and full lips differ from later Mesoamerican depictions, and this has fueled fringe theories about transoceanic contact, claims that ancient Africans, Polynesians, or others may have influenced or mingled with the Olmecs. These theories remain unproven and highly controversial. Mainstream archaeology maintains the Olmecs were a Native American civilization, fully indigenous to the region and developed independently. But such theories reflect a broader truth. The Olmecs raise more questions than answers. They didn't just carve stone heads, they built sprawling ceremonial centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta. Cities with sophisticated layouts, massive earthen mounds, and complex drainage systems. They sculpted jade masks with near microscopic detail. They aligned structures with astronomical precision, and they left behind symbols, early writing perhaps, that have yet to be fully deciphered. Some of these symbols, found on a serpentine block known as the Cascajal tablet, appear to represent a unique writing system, the earliest known in the Americas, but we can't read it. Without a bilingual key or Rosetta Stone-like discovery, their script remains a closed door. Were they recording royal lineages, myths, agricultural records? We simply don't know. Around 400 BCE, the great Olmec centers were abandoned, not destroyed, just left behind. Why? There are no signs of mass violence or warfare, no indications of plague or invasion. Some suggest environmental change. Rivers shifted, soil eroded, the land could no longer sustain large populations. Others believe internal political or religious upheavals fractured their society. Still others think they gradually migrated and were absorbed into new cultures like the Maya and Zapotec. But the truth? The truth is lost to time. Despite their disappearance, echoes of the Olmecs reverberated across Mesoamerica. Their iconography, mythology, and architectural styles show up centuries later in distant cities. The jaguar-man hybrids, the sacred mountains, the altars shaped like thrones, all point back to Olmec origins. It's as if they planted seeds across a continent and then stepped back into the shadows.
Modern excavations continue to uncover Olmec artifacts, miniature figurines, ceremonial axes, pottery, and even clues of complex trade networks stretching across thousands of miles. Yet each find is a fragment, not a full picture. The heads still stand, silent, massive, impenetrable. They refuse to tell us who the Olmecs were, but they remind us that once in the damp lowlands and steaming forests of ancient Mexico, a great civilization thrived, one that left behind no books, no monuments with grand inscriptions, just enigmas in stone. The Olmecs challenge our assumptions. We often think of progress as linear, of civilizations rising in a predictable pattern, but the Olmecs seem to emerge from nowhere, fully formed, and capable of wonders we still can't fully explain. They may not have built pyramids as large as the Maya or left behind empires as vast as the Aztec, but they came first. And in many ways, they were the blueprint. So where did they go? Perhaps they didn't vanish at all. Perhaps they transformed, folded into new cultures, their essence absorbed into the DNA of Mesoamerican civilization. Or perhaps we simply haven't looked in the right place or asked the right question. The colossal heads remain, watching, waiting. And we, thousands of years later, are still trying to understand what they knew and why they left no voice behind.
Around 1200 BCE, a wave of destruction swept across the eastern Mediterranean. Great cities were burned to the ground, fortresses crumbled, entire kingdoms collapsed, marking the end of the Bronze Age. And at the center of this cataclysm stood an enigma, an unnamed force, later called the Sea Peoples. They appeared suddenly in the records of multiple ancient civilizations, most notably Egypt. Pharaoh Ramses III, in the 12th century BCE, faced them in battle and described their arrival in chilling terms. He spoke of a confederation of 9 peoples, attacking by both land and sea. They came in ships, bringing women, children, and oxen with them, as if they were not just warriors, but migrants, or perhaps exiles, in search of a new home. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how could such a mysterious group bring down entire civilizations? We have no answer, only fragments. The Sea Peoples didn't write their own records. What we know of them comes from those they fought. Inscriptions and reliefs from Egypt show them wearing feathered headdresses and wielding round shields. Their ships appear advanced for the time, capable of long-distance voyages across the Mediterranean. But their names remain elusive. Only vague references remain: the Peliset, the Shurden, the Shekelish, the Denyen, and others. Some scholars have tried to connect these groups with known populations: Mycenaeans, Minoans, Luwians, or displaced peoples from the Aegean and Anatolia. Others suggest they may have included Proto-Philistines or even Indo-Europeans migrating south. But there is no consensus. What we do know is their impact was seismic. The Hittite Empire, once a dominant power in Anatolia, was wiped off the map. Cities along the Levantine coast, from Ugarit to Ashkelon, were burned and abandoned. Trade routes that had connected Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Aegean for centuries suddenly went silent. The complex international system of the late Bronze Age collapsed. A dark age followed. Even mighty Egypt, though it claimed victory, was severely weakened. Ramses III's inscriptions boast of defeating the Sea Peoples at the Battle of the Delta, using archers and naval forces to drive them back. But this victory came at great cost. Egypt never fully recovered its former power. Why did the Sea Peoples attack? Some believe they were victims of broader climate shifts. Drought, famine, or natural disasters may have forced them to migrate en masse.
Others argue that political instability, population pressure, or the collapse of nearby civilizations triggered a domino effect of chaos and conquest. But this only deepens the mystery. How could scattered groups of refugees, if that's what they were, topple entire empires? One possibility is coordination. The fact that multiple kingdoms fell at nearly the same time suggests something more than coincidence. The Sea Peoples may have operated as a coalition of displaced groups united by desperation or ambition. They may have exploited a world already weakened by internal strife, striking vulnerable targets with strategic precision. Or perhaps they weren't a single people at all. Some researchers argue that Sea Peoples is not a name, but a label applied to various groups with different origins. Like barbarian in later centuries, it may have been a blanket term used by the Egyptians to describe foreign invaders they could not fully understand. This theory raises a chilling thought. The Sea Peoples may not have disappeared at all. They may have simply been absorbed into new civilizations, leaving behind no distinct trace. The Peliset, for example, are often linked to the Philistines, one of the Israelites' great rivals in later biblical texts. Could remnants of the Sea Peoples have helped shape the very societies that rose after the Bronze Age collapse? The lack of hard evidence keeps these questions open. Archaeologists continued to find ruins of cities destroyed during this period, but identifying the attackers is like chasing shadows. No definitive artifacts, no known homeland, no single language to decipher. What remains is the aftermath, a world reset. In the wake of the Sea Peoples, the ancient Mediterranean changed forever. Power shifted from empires to smaller city-states. Old gods were forgotten. Writing systems vanished in some regions for centuries. It was as if an entire age had been erased, replaced by something new and far less certain. The Sea Peoples remain one of history's most elusive forces, capable of toppling the ancient world, yet leaving behind almost nothing of themselves. Were they warriors? Refugees? Pirates? A coalition of desperate peoples, or a proto-empire in disguise? Whatever the answer, their legacy is undeniable. They turned the tide of history with fire and silence. And then, like a storm, they were gone.
In the arid plains of southern Peru, where rain is rare and the sun scorches the earth, a mystery stretches across the desert floor, etched into the ground by hands long gone. These are the Nazca Lines, enormous geoglyphs depicting animals, plants, geometric shapes, and sprawling lines that run straight for miles. Some are so vast they can only be seen properly from the sky. Created over 1,500 years ago by the Nazca people, these figures range from hummingbirds and monkeys to strange humanoid forms with staring eyes. Yet for all their scale and clarity, no one knows for certain why they were made or how. First discovered in the 1920s when commercial flights began passing over the region, the Nazca Lines appeared suddenly to the modern world, like whispers from the past suddenly shouted from the sky. Stretching over 200 square miles, the geoglyphs number in the hundreds. The hummingbird, for example, spans over 300 feet. The spider, carefully rendered with anatomical precision, measures over 150 feet in length. These weren't random scratches in the dirt. They were purposeful, elegant, and deeply symbolic. But how could an ancient people with no known flying technology create images that can only be fully appreciated from the air? This question has fueled countless theories, some grounded, others fantastical. Some researchers suggest that the Nazca had methods for scaling their designs using grids and simple surveying tools. Wooden stakes have been found at some geoglyph sites, possibly used to align lines with precision. Others argue that the sheer visibility from surrounding foothills was enough for the artists to gauge their work. And yet, the scale, the orientation, and the perfection still leave many unconvinced.
Some shapes stretch for miles in perfectly straight lines, unwavering across rough terrain. Others curve smoothly or form perfect spirals. There's no question of coincidence. This was a culture that valued geometry, symmetry, and alignment. And it leads us to the deeper question: why? One dominant theory holds that the Nazca Lines were part of a grand ritual landscape, designed for the gods above. Perhaps these drawings were offerings meant to be seen by divine eyes looking down from the heavens. Many of the animals, like the monkey and the condor, were sacred in Nazca culture. The spider, it's believed, symbolized rain. In a desert where water is life, could these figures have been desperate prayers for survival, scratched into the earth in hope? Another theory suggests the lines were a kind of astronomical calendar. Some glyphs appear to align with solstices and planetary movements. The long, straight lines might have marked the rising and setting of celestial bodies, guiding agricultural or religious ceremonies. Ancient observers would have watched the stars shift along the lines etched into their sacred ground, uniting sky and earth in ritual. Then there's the idea of sacred pathways. Some archaeologists believe the lines were meant to be walked, ceremonial routes for processions, dances, or pilgrimage. The Nazca may have journeyed along these paths in ritual, following routes laid down centuries before. The geoglyphs in this sense were not merely pictures, but experiences. They were stories walked into life. Still, if the lines were for walking, why such grand visible from the air designs? Of course, not all theories are grounded in archaeology. Some suggest the Nazca Lines point to contact with extraterrestrials, ancient astronauts who needed aerial beacons or landing zones. The precision and scale of the lines, especially when considering the lack of aerial perspective in ancient times, fuels this speculation. While the mainstream academic community dismisses such ideas as pseudoscience, the questions they raise remain tantalizing. Who were the Nazca really communicating with? Adding to the mystery is the Nazca's disappearance. By 600 CE, their civilization had collapsed, possibly due to environmental changes, overuse of resources, or political turmoil. Whatever the reason, the people who made the lines vanished, leaving behind no written language to explain their creation. No inscriptions, no instructions, just the silence of the desert and symbols carved into it. And the desert, ironically, has been a guardian of these ancient etchings. The region's extreme dryness and stable climate have preserved the lines for centuries. But now modern threats loom. Deforestation, illegal encroachments, and climate change threaten the fragile surface. In 2018, a truck driver veered off the Pan American Highway, damaging part of a geoglyph. Just one misstep, after 1,500 years of protection, was all it took. In recent years, satellite imagery, drones, and AI have led to the discovery of dozens more geoglyphs, smaller, more eroded, yet still clearly part of the same ritual landscape. It suggests that the lines we see today are just part of a much larger system. Perhaps the Nazca weren't simply drawing pictures. They were encoding a worldview, a belief system, a cosmic language still waiting to be understood. Who were these people who wrote with earth instead of ink? Why did they build for the sky? Was it devotion, science, communication, or something we still can't even imagine? The Nazca Lines are not ruins in the traditional sense. There are no walls or towers, nothing to climb or enter. They are questions, drawn into the bones of the earth. And after all this time, the questions remain.
Beneath the sun-baked plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey lies a mystery carved deep into the earth, a sprawling underground city called Derinkuyu. From the surface, there's little hint of the vast labyrinth below, just a plain village, a scattering of homes, a few ancient churches. But just beneath it all lies a structure so complex and advanced that it has defied easy explanation. Discovered in the 1960s by a man renovating his basement, Derinkuyu wasn't just a few chambers or storage areas. As he knocked down a wall, he stumbled into a tunnel, and then another, and another,
until it became clear he had unearthed the entrance to something much, much larger. Archaeologists would later find that this underground city extends more than 18 levels deep, with enough space to house 20,000 people, along with livestock, kitchens, schools, wineries, ventilation shafts, and even tombs. But the real question isn't how big it is, it's why it was built at all. Derinkuyu is not a cave system, it's man-made, chiseled painstakingly out of soft volcanic rock called tuff. Yet despite the softness of the rock, carving it into a stable, livable city required immense planning. Every corridor was designed with airflow in mind. Each level has stone doors that could roll into place to seal off sections in case of attack. Wells tapped into underground water sources, ensuring a long-term water supply. Air shafts reached all the way to the surface, 55 meters up, to bring in fresh air. And all of this was done without modern technology. Conventional archaeology suggests the upper levels were started around the 8th to 7th century BCE during the time of the Phrygians. Others propose even earlier construction, possibly by the Hittites. But this is where the story starts to split. Some scholars argue that Derinkuyu wasn't built from scratch all at once. Instead, it was expanded in phases over centuries, with each generation adding new levels as the need arose, maybe due to waves of invasions or as a response to natural threats. Cappadocia was often a target during times of war, by Persians, Romans, Byzantines, and later the Mongols. In this view, Derinkuyu was a refuge, a last resort when the surface became too dangerous. But others aren't so sure. Because while it's plausible that people expanded it over time, the original builders remain unknown. There are no inscriptions, no builders' marks, no written records from the early stages of construction. And nothing explains the sheer scale and foresight involved in creating something so elaborate underground. Why would any ancient people spend decades, perhaps centuries, carving into rock when they could simply move, hide, or fight above? Some researchers believe the answer lies in climate. Derinkuyu may have been a response to extreme environmental conditions, not war, but survival. Perhaps there was a time when the surface became uninhabitable, severe drought, intense cold, or even the aftermath of a cataclysm. In such a case, moving below ground would have offered protection, consistent temperatures, shelter from the sun, and security from chaos above. More fringe theories go even further. Some propose Derinkuyu is much older than mainstream archaeology admits, possibly 10,000 years old or more, dating back to the end of the last ice age. In this view, it may have been built by a lost civilization that vanished long before the rise of Mesopotamia or Egypt. These theories often draw on the same arguments used for places like Göbekli Tepe or the Sphinx, signs of high intelligence with no clear origin. There's also the theory that Derinkuyu was not just built for hiding, but for long-term subterranean living. Evidence of communal spaces, storage rooms, schools, even religious chapels suggests that people didn't just shelter here during danger. They may have lived here for extended periods. But again, why? Could they have been preparing for disaster? Could they have been fleeing something more than war, something they believed would return? And then there's the silence of the stone itself. Unlike surface cities, where monuments, inscriptions, and temples tell the stories of their makers, Derinkuyu offers nothing but the rock. No writing, no names, no myths, just passageways and chambers, eerily empty, as if the builders wanted to be forgotten. Today, only a portion of Derinkuyu is open to the public. Most of the network remains sealed, unexplored. Some tunnels reportedly stretch for miles, connecting to other underground cities like Kaimakli. In fact, more than 200 similar complexes have been found in the Cappadocia region, some small, others quite large, suggesting that underground living may have been widespread. But why did it all stop? Why did people abandon these underground metropolises and return to life on the surface? Was the threat they feared gone? Or was the knowledge simply lost, forgotten by time, buried under dust, and rediscovered by accident? In the end, Derinkuyu is a place that raises more questions than answers. A city without a known builder, a refuge with no written record, a monument to fear or wisdom. We may never know which one. What we do know is this: someone, long ago, carved a civilization into stone and left behind a silent message deep underground.
We have walked through forgotten deserts, climbed sacred mountains, stood beneath silent stone giants, and looked skyward through the eyes of those who came long before us. What we've seen cannot be explained by textbooks alone. Why did civilizations build with impossible precision? Why did they align their temples with the stars? Why do stories of gods descending from the heavens echo across every ancient culture, from Sumer to Mesoamerica? And more curiously, why did so many of these civilizations fall, and fall so completely that their greatest works remain buried for thousands of years? We call them primitive, yet they solved problems we still struggled to understand. We call them myth makers, yet their myths eerily reflect truths we are only now rediscovering. There is something deeply humbling in this realization, that the ancients may not have been behind us, but ahead of us in ways we don't yet grasp. These are not just archaeological oddities or forgotten stories. They are the fingerprints of something greater, a deeper intelligence or memory of a time we no longer remember. A time when stone was more than just stone, when alignment with the cosmos was a necessity, not superstition, when knowledge was not hoarded, but woven into the very fabric of temples, tombs, and tools. And still, they left us no clear answers, just puzzles. Perhaps that was intentional. Perhaps they knew, as we must come to understand, that mystery is a teacher more powerful than certainty. Mystery draws us forward. It unsettles us, forces us to re-examine everything we think we know. It reminds us that we are not the peak of human knowledge, but just another chapter in a much older story. One filled with lost languages, vanished cities, and technologies that whisper of capabilities far beyond what we've achieved today. So, where does that leave us? Maybe the goal is not to find all the answers. Maybe it's to reignite our wonder, to reawaken the curiosity that built pyramids without cranes, that mapped the stars without telescopes, that passed knowledge not through wires, but through stone, myth, and memory. Because in that curiosity lies the spark that first made us human, not our tools, not our machines, but our relentless desire to know what lies beyond the veil. And for every mystery we explored in this journey, there are hundreds more waiting, still buried, still hidden, still whispering from beneath the soil, the waves, the stars. Our ancestors may have disappeared, but they left us trails, symbols, alignments, monuments, and maps. If we choose to see them not as relics, but as messages. This is not the end of the story. In truth, it's only the beginning, because to explore ancient mysteries isn't just to look back. It's to rediscover ourselves, to remember what we once knew, and to wonder what else might be out there, just waiting to be uncovered.
If this journey into ancient mysteries has sparked even the smallest flicker of curiosity, then you're exactly where you need to be. There's a vast world of secrets hidden beneath the stones, buried in the sand, and whispered in the stars.
waiting for those willing to look deeper. Subscribe to this channel to keep exploring the unknown, the unexplained, and the wonders that defy easy answers. Each video brings new stories, some strange, some unsettling, all fascinating. Whether it's lost civilizations, forgotten technologies, or mysteries that science can't quite solve, there's always more to uncover. If this video made you pause and wonder, please give it a like. Share it with someone who loves a good mystery, because these stories are meant to be shared, questioned, and debated. And don't be shy, drop a comment below and tell me which mystery captured your imagination the most, or what you want to see explored next. Your thoughts and questions help shape what comes next. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never lose that sense of wonder. The past is never truly gone. It's only waiting for us to find it.